everyone, it's Alyce here and we're filming our August wrap-up. August was a bit of a weird month because we decided to start doing mid-month wrap-ups because we've been reading so much, and then August is like the least books we've read this entire year so far. So August has been the least books we've read the entire year so far, which means it's kind of been pointless that we decided to do the mid-month wrap-ups, but at least it means I've got less books to talk about today and it is easier to keep on top of things, which is a good time. So I'm going to tell you our stats to start with, because we're going to start doing like monthly stats of like the amount of pages that you're intending to read, the pages that you did read, what kind of percentages that adds up to, what ratings we've given different things. So see how it goes. So in August we were intending to read 7,621 pages and we actually ended up reading 5,587. Which is still pretty impressive, considering we were reading less books and I was doing a lot of work and I did 2 full-time weeks of shifts. But it ended up being about 73%. So we didn't get to 6 of the books we were planning to read. We actually ended up cutting Burn by Patrick Ness off the TBR completely because we'd said we were torn between that and Eldest. So that just went out the window. And we're going to be rolling everything over to read in September because we already managed to get like at least a quarter into 4 of them. Haven't started Demon Road by Derek Lander yet because it's just very long, so we put that off. But I did end up reading a book that wasn't on the TBR because I finished my books quite early, so I'll share my thoughts on these with you. In the description below I'll list the titles of the books that we mentioned in the first half of this wrap up, so like the mid-month, and I'll give you a link for that. So if you're interested in our thoughts in like some of the Murder Most and Ladylike series and like some Victoria Schwab, then that'll be down in the description. But 4-star ratings, we had 5 5-star books, we had 1 4-star book, we had 2 3.5-star books, which is just me basically being indecisive and not picking. We had 4 3-star books, 1 2-star book, and 2 1-star books. So there was an overwhelming amount of 5 stars, but then also 3 of those were rereads that I'd already given 5 stars to in the past. So technically 2 5 stars. So it's been a diverse month, to say the least. But yeah, let's just get into talking about the titles. So the first book I want to talk about today is The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan, and this is one that I gave 5 stars to. I just love the Wheel of Time series so much. This is the 3rd installment and we've been reading them like 1 a month, so we've been reading them since June now. I haven't managed to get the 4th one on the September TBR that we filmed, but I'm hoping that we're going to be able to squeeze it in anyway. So this follows a guy called Rand and his friends as they kind of get chased out of their village because they're part of like the events that are going to shape the age of this time. It's hard to describe without giving anything away because it's better going into it hardly knowing anything, and I really enjoyed it because I literally knew nothing about it. I had no idea what it was about apart from the fact it was a 16-book series and 4 of them had Brandon Sanderson also writing. So I won't be able to say too much about this one, but I can say that I enjoyed this one more than the first book, not as much as the second one, but actually slightly more than the second one at the same time. So the second one took ages to get started, but when it got into it I loved it. But this one, you hardly follow Rand at all. Like for the first like 500 pages or something stupid, he only narrates like 3.5 pages, and I'm not a huge fan of Rand, so that is perfect for me. So you're following Perrin and Matt on their adventures, and you're following the girls as they're like off in Tarvalon doing trading things, and then everybody does some more travelling because that always happens in fantasy, especially when it's like 700 pages of fantasy. But yeah, loved this one and definitely recommend this series. I'm really looking forward to just carrying on with it when we can, and it's kind of ruining every other book for me because I just want to read these and nothing else. The next book I want to talk about is Eldest by Christopher Paolini. So we read this as part of the Inheritance Cycle read-along, which I will link down in the description, and it's being hosted over on Instagram. We're also meant to be reading Brazinga and Inheritance to follow through with the read-along, but we went vastly off the rails, and I don't think it's going to get done. We even like tabbed it up, so we had what we had to read every day, and we ended up finishing this the day we should have started Brazinga, even though we started it a week late. We're just not good at following schedules, apparently, even when we try really, really hard. So Eldest is the 2nd book in the Inheritance Cycle, following Eragon. Basically, Guy finds a dragon egg. It's a dragon in the egg. He's a dragon rider. Bad things are occurring because the only other dragon in like the whole kingdom belongs to the big evil guy. So Eragon and Saphira, who is his dragon, are going to have to team up to destroy the big bad. This is part of that story. It's hard to sum up how I felt about it because the first like 200 pages I just didn't want to read it. I wasn't enjoying it. It was very slow. I couldn't really see where it was going. I didn't care, especially compared to the Wheel of Time. Even though there's not all that much happening when you look at it, it's written in such a compelling way that you care about their little like meetings at the pub. You care about them like wandering and trying to find a barn to sleep in because they're all really compelling characters. And I just find the character of Eragon for the first half of this book is just bland. And that's going to be an unpopular opinion, and there's a reason why the inheritance cycle is so celebrated, and I'm pretty sure that I'm getting to the bits that make people love them, because the second half of this book, he like goes through quite drastic character change and transformation. And yeah, so he becomes far more interesting, and the second half is much easier to read, which is why we managed to catch up so quickly, because the first 2 or 3 days took us 6 days straight, which shouldn't have been possible. I gave it 4 stars because I gave Eragon 5 stars and I like this less, but I'm now actually kind of thinking it should have been a 3. But we'll leave it at 4 for now. We'll have a think on it as I read the rest of the series. I'm glad that I'm forcing myself to carry on with them because I think I am going to enjoy them eventually. But it's just they're very, very chunky, and for somebody who used to be scared of big books, to then have a big book that is a little bit boring makes me scared of big books again. So I'm not surprised that I'm struggling to motivate myself to do the rest of the read-along. But I do think it's good that people are celebrating these, because Christopher Paolini's new book is coming out in October, I want to say. Might be the end of September, don't quote me on it. And that's To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. So it's good that people are celebrating his series despite the fact that it's like quite old, because he's got a new book coming out. Other books I need to talk about in this are Mayhem by Estelle Law, which I gave 3 stars to. Again, was just very bland, and I'd been really looking forward to it because people were saying it was like The Lost Boys, and I've never seen The Lost Boys, but I thought, oh, this is going to make me really want to watch The Lost Boys. No, it's made me not want to watch The Lost Boys. If The Lost Boys is anything like this, I'm going to fall asleep. This book was so slow that it was one that we should have easily been able to read in a day. We read for 4 days at the beginning of the month and didn't read anything else, and then I had to finish it by myself because Sean just couldn't carry on. It follows a girl called Mayhem as her and her mother return back to her mother's hometown after she leaves her abusive partner. Mayhem discovers that there's like a family secret, and she's now involved in it because she's gone home, and it kind of gets a bit mystical, magic-y. It's kind of implied that it's vampires, and I thought Lost Boys was vampires, but it doesn't really feel like vampires. It kind of just feels more magic-y. Like, if you've read The Graces and you enjoyed that, you'll enjoy this, because it's quite similar in that it's just kind of the mundane everyday, seeing the magic in the small things, and with like a twist of kind of darkness. But it definitely wasn't the story for me, which is a shame. So yeah, 3 stars for Mayhem. Also read something else that wasn't quite for me, and that was 13 Reasons Why. And I gave this 2 stars in the end. I had to sit on it for a few days, because if this had been written differently, it could have been a 5-star book. Because the first half I was really enjoying. I love the way that it's told. If you don't know anything about 13 Reasons Why, I'll be surprised, because it's very, very, very well known. A girl called Hannah commits suicide, and she leaves a series of 13 tapes that contain the reasons why, addressed to different people, and we are following Clay, who is our main character, as he receives the tapes and discovers why he has been sent them, why he is on them, what he did to Hannah. This is a tricky one, because as I said, like, I really enjoyed the way it was written. I loved the kind of way that it was almost a conversation between Hannah and Clay, because you get his like little thoughts kind of, I can't think of what the word I'm trying to use there is. His thoughts are kind of like inserted into her monologue, so he isn't actually speaking to her, but it reads like a conversation, and that makes the pacing really, really quick. And that's very interesting to me. But I just don't think that the suicide element was very necessary. And it might sound stupid to say that the suicide element isn't necessary because the whole point is that she commits suicide. That's the reason for the tapes. That is the reason behind the whole story. But it isn't necessary. This could have been just as impactful if it had been a girl who'd moved schools and was like, these are 13 reasons why I've had to leave. You've chased me out. You need to think about your behaviour. You've impacted me that much. I've had to uproot my whole life. And I just think that I can see why DiAngelo would choose to focus on suicide, because obviously if you push somebody that far, that's horrendous. That can never be taken back, and you should really work on yourself if you're making somebody feel as though that's the only option that they have for their lives. But in the context of things, I think it would have been more powerful if it had been without that aspect. Especially because, like, I'm just going to get spoilery now. Clay, the whole book, is like, I shouldn't be on these tapes. There's no reason for me to be on these tapes. I'm a good guy. I am the best. I have never done anything wrong. And everybody agrees, like, Clay's never done anything wrong. Clay's really good. Clay's really good. And then Hannah herself is like, Clay, you shouldn't be on these tapes. Sorry, on these tapes. Why are you on these tapes? Oh, yeah, because you were good. You were the only one who gave me hope. That's not a fucking reason to put him on the tapes. And so the whole point is that we've got a character who doesn't really need to change. He is a good character. He doesn't need to change at all. And he's getting these things that should be making him change. And now if we'd been reading it from one of the other characters' perspectives, one of the people who bullied her, one of the people who sexually assaulted her, then that would have been more powerful, because you would see them dealing with what their behaviour had done and why they needed to change and how they could be better and how much of an impact they'd had. But instead you're reading Clay, who is a good guy, being like, oh wow, boys can be assholes. Like, yeah, we know that. What we need to see is the assholes discovering that about themselves and really viewing themselves and discovering that they are assholes and they should be better. And there's just so many ways that this could have been a 5-star, but it failed on all of them. And the only reason I gave it 2 stars was because of how much I liked the way that it was written. It could have been a 1-star, but I liked the kind of way it felt like a conversation, and I thought it was really cleverly done. But if you've ever seen 500 Days of Summer, then the ending just reminded me of that. It's like really throwaway, and like I loved 500 Days of Summer, and the ending ruined the whole film for me, and it feels exactly the same with this. Like, even if I've been really, really enjoying this book, as soon as it got to the ending, I would have just thrown it across the room. And I'm or out the window. And I was not enjoying it, so I was a bit like exasperated by the ending, but I kind of just rolled my eyes. Like, he follows like the quiet girl at school and is like, Sky. That's how it ends. He's like, I'm not gonna do it again. I'm gonna be a real good guy this time. I'm gonna change my ways from being a good guy to being a good guy. Like, you're not changing, Clay. You didn't talk to Hannah because you were a coward, and now you're talking to Sky because you're less of a coward. But, like, Hannah didn't need to commit suicide for Clay to go through that character transformation. It wasn't necessary. She could have just, like, changed her name and moved across country, and him be like, I'm never going to find her again. But then it would have turned into a Paper Town scenario, and that wouldn't have been the best either. There's just no way that this book can be good. That's all I'm realising. No matter how many ways you twist it, it's still just not great. Yeah, it's just frustrating. There's also like lots of contradictions within Hannah herself, because she's like, oh, people need to speak out. People need to speak out. I'm going to speak out. And then she has an opportunity to speak out and she doesn't. And it's like, you're getting to know this character for like 200 pages. And then in the last 50 pages, she like flips to become a completely different character, and it doesn't make any sense. And I just don't know why people love this. I can see why people don't love it, because I don't love it, but, like, if you're one of those people that really enjoys this book, and you're, like, getting really mad at me for not liking it, please just let me know what it is about it. Because, like, some people say it's, like, really powerful, and it makes you think differently about the way that you treat people, but I didn't get that at all, and I don't even think that Clay really got that, because, as I keep saying, he was a good guy. If it had been written with one of the more challenging characters as the protagonist, or if you'd had Clay flip and go from being a good guy to being the asshole because he's like, I need to get vengeance for her, I need to get revenge, I need to, like, teach these guys a lesson, that would have been more interesting. If it had been like, oh, so she's trying to make the bad guys good, but she's actually made the good guy bad. that would have been interesting, because then you can see again the way that people impact others without meaning to, and even your intentions can backfire. But we didn't get that. We just got a bland piece of crap, really. And I knew I wasn't going to like it, and I was really sad when I pulled it out of the jar, and I've ranted about it way too much, so I'm going to shut up now. But disappointed, to say the least. Can't remember what else I've got to talk about now. That's how much that book annoys me. Oh, God, the other two from the TBR Jar. It was a disappointing month, to say the least, with the TBR Jar. So we had Silver Shard by Betsy Streeter, which was the sequel to Silverwood, which I thought I could remember really, really enjoying, and only ended up giving 3 stars to. And Silver Shard also got 3 stars. I don't think you need to read the first book to enjoy the second, because I can't remember anything that happened in the first book, and the characters are all reintroduced again, and you get to know them, and it works well as a standalone. And I wrote in my review of the first book that I don't think you'll actually need to carry on with the series, and I still stand by that. There was meant to be more, and this was released in like 2016, and there still hasn't been any announcement of any other ones, so I'm guessing it's just going to kind of end here. But again, very bland. It had a lot of plot lines that weren't fully explored. There was a lot of like jumping around all over the place, and it didn't make a lot of sense. I could see what she was trying to do, and it could have worked, and it didn't for me. It's kind of like Supernatural, because there's like a family who are like hunting monsters, and they are called Tromindocs. Yeah, I can see the word in my head, I just can't remember how to say it. They're hunting these monsters, and the little boy gets kidnapped by one of them, and they have to try and save him. It's your standard plot. It propels quite quickly, but it just didn't really do anything for me. I didn't feel gripped. I could see how it was going to end. It ended the way I thought it was going to, and 3 stars. I also read We Are Watching by M. Stephen Stewart, and that got a 1 star because it was just written terribly. The character is called Henry. But you get, like, Trainee Malone, Henry Malone, Henry, Hank. Like, I know what you're trying to do, giving your character lots of different names. You're trying to make it more realistic, because you're saying, like, oh, look, he's got nicknames and things. But if you've got somebody who's like, I've called Henry, Trainee Malone pushes his way through the crowd. It's like, yeah, but if you don't know that his name's Henry Malone, you don't realise that he is Trainee Malone, and you think it's somebody else, and it just made everything very clunky and very hard to keep track of, because all of the characters had many, many names. The writing was just so bad, and it was so long. It was like 500 pages, and I should have DNF'd it because I was bored after 10%, but the prologue was really, really interesting, and I wanted to carry on with it, and I wanted to love it. But it's like a world where you've got an implant in your brain, and you can, like, do stuff online, like, with your head. In your head. Like, you're all, like, connected. Obviously, there's, like, sinister subplot of, like, people being controlled and government things. Typical dystopian. But it's, like, it doesn't get explained very well. You get money by, like, through shares, and I thought, because I'm an old person, that it meant, like, stocks and shares, not, like, shares online. But it's, like, so if like, okay, it's so stressed, I can't even speak anymore. If a terrible, awful thing happens to you and you share it online, then you get money. Because other people share it, and they're interested in it. You say, like, social media. But I didn't really get that to start with, so that took me a little while. I think great concept, terrible execution. I'm not going to carry on with the second one because I was so grateful when the first one ended, but the second one's only like 200 pages. So I'm also kind of jealous that the first one wasn't 200 pages, because then I wouldn't have wasted as much time on this. I also read Foxes by M.A. Bennett, which is the 3rd book out of 5, apparently, from the Stag series. And now this was a glow-up. This I was impressed by. I was interested in the first one, and then the ending happened, and I just lost all interest and gave it 3 stars. Read the second one, gave it either 1 or 2 stars. Wished I hadn't continued, because it was exactly the same story as the first one, but like 200 pages longer. But like, it was exactly the same story. You could have literally copy-pasted it and just changed some of the characters' names, and it was the same book. But the 3rd one, we go to London, and it's Christmas, and they're trying to take down this sinister, evil society, and it's interesting. Like, you meet some of the parents and some of the grandparents of the characters that we already know, and you get to know, like, the dynamics there, and it's almost like it's becoming more of an adult book as it goes on. like, it's going from quite clearly YA to, like, oh, we're about to go to university. It's like we're following these characters from, like, the crossover between YA, NA, adult, and I'm interested in where it's going to go. And I gave it 3.5 stars because I just couldn't quite justify giving it 4. But I was thoroughly impressed. I borrowed it from the library, and I thought I was going to hate it because I didn't really like the last one, and I don't really know why I borrowed it, but I just couldn't be bothered to read We Are Watching, and I wanted to distract myself. So I read this one in like 2 days, and it wasn't on the TBR, and it was like 400 pages, so I definitely shouldn't have read it this month, but I did, and I'm glad I did, because it was enjoyable. That's all you can really ask for when you're reading high fantasy and you're enjoying it, and just anything else is just not hitting the mark. And this is what I mean when I say the Wheel of Time is just ruining every other book for me. So yeah, as you can see, this was not the most successful month that we've had. Watch the first half of this mid-month, like the mid-month wrap-up, because that's where I'm like, oh look, 4 5 stars. Isn't that great? Yeah, it was great, Alyce. And then the rest of the month just went downhill, and now you're kind of sad. We got a quarter of the way into Loveless by Alyce Oseman. We got about 20% of the way into A Dark Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. We got 25% into I, Ada by Julia Gray. And we got 25% into 13 Stories by Jonathan Sims. So we're going to be carrying those 4 over and reading in, what month is it? September. So I can't really share my thoughts on those with you now, but we are working on those. Eventually we'll read Demon Road, but it's long, so we'll put that off for a little bit. Yeah, bit disappointed on how the month went as a whole, but I am back at work, and so it's going to be less successful than it has been the last few months, because the last few months we've done nothing but read. So I've also got a quick sneaky cheeky mystery unboxing for you, because I've had a parcel delivered while I've been filming and I have literally no idea what it is, so I thought, why not open it at the end for you loyal viewers who've listened to me rant like hell for the last 20 minutes. So let's see what this is. It's from Waterstones, and I've got like quite a few thingies on the way, so I don't know which one of these it's going to be, but it's something that I'm struggling to get into. Oh, okay, it's prettier than I was expecting. It's The Lost Book of the White by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. This is the second book in the Red Scrolls of Magic Eldest Curses series, which is following Magnus and Alec from the Mortal Instruments on further adventures. I always get the fancy schmancy editions because I just think they're beautiful, and I don't like the normal covers because they have people on them, but I haven't actually read further than book 5 of Mortal Instruments, so I don't know why I keep wasting all my money on these, but also it's pretty, so this has cheered me up a little bit. Oh, I like it. And it's got the like stampy thing in the front, like she doesn't actually sign them, they like do like a stamp signed thing, and I just think that's really cool. Nice. Okay, yeah, that's a good parcel to receive. I'm happy with that. So, yeah, I'll leave you there. If you like this video, please like it. If you'd like to subscribe, then do. I will really, really appreciate that. If you'd like to share your thoughts on any of these books down in the comments, then please do. And if you'd like to tell me to just stop complaining about everything, then you are more than welcome to tell me that. But I'll continue because that's where I get my kicks, apparently. As I said before, I'll link the mid-month down below if you want to see what we read in the first half of August. And I'll leave you to it now. Have a great day, and bye!